In the name of the Creator, who made all things. Amen. Please be seated. Yeah. Oh, it worked. It worked. Both of these readings this morning sum up the life of St. Francis of Assisi. We mostly think of Francis as being the patron saint of animals. We have statues of him in our yard. We have one in the back and one in the front. We bless our animals once a year on this weekend. Almost every image of Francis has him holding somewhere at his feet or in his arms a bird. Sometimes several birds, and sometimes a wolf by his side. More on that in a minute. But the passage from Matthew that I just read is also deeply, deeply Franciscan. He gave up much to follow Jesus. Brought up as a wealthy young man, wild young man, he headed off to fight in a war. And after being captured and injured and sick, or probably sicker than a dog, so to speak, and spending a year in prison, he returned home utterly broken. He no longer wanted a life of wild carousing. He no longer wanted to have wealth or name or notoriety. His come to Jesus moment was about as important as Paul's. It may have taken more than 3 days, but his transformation was utterly total. When he was 24 years old, he prayed in the tiny church in San Damiano. Christ spoke to him from the crucifix, saying, "Rebuild my church." He originally understood that to mean literally with brick and mortar, and he began to do that. The townspeople, of course, thought he was crazy, and one day his father chased him into town, yelling at him for squandering the family's wealth on the poor. In an act of complete separation from his old life, he stripped himself naked, renounced his family rights, folded up and handed his clothes back to his father. From then on, he dressed himself in a simple flaxen tunic tied at the waist with a cord. That's the image we always see. Francis gradually came to recognize that his vocation was in rebuilding the spiritual life of the church, not just its buildings. These past 5 weeks, while we have been celebrating the season of creation, the planet has experienced the hottest September ever recorded. World politics are a literal living example of fiddling while Rome burns. But if we think that the church is a shining example of how we are dealing with all of this, we are wrong. An organization called the Public Religion Research Institute released a survey, I think it was in July, revealing that among U.S. religious groups, no single faith community exceeds 1/3 of its membership viewing Earth's current situation as a crisis. We are living through the hottest year ever experienced by human beings, and only a minority of religious people think this is a problem. And the group of people who has some belief, although not a lot, but some belief that we are in a crisis, are the religiously unaffiliated. My sense is we need a new Francis for our day. His humility brought him close to the heart of Christ. He found following Christ to be the only way he could live. For him, the yoke wasn't a burden. It was light, and it was something he could only do. People began to follow him. He got a little bit of a group together. They actually helped him build some of those churches with brick and mortar. This alone would be enough for him to be a saint. Franciscan spirituality is rich and holy, and it is the largest of all the religious orders that we consider to be legitimate in Christianity. In his canticle, he prays, "Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister moon, Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, producing varied fruits with colored flowers and herbs. Oh, that we would tend to her soul before it is too late. My hope is that these last 5 years will inspire us somehow to be part of a growing group of people who do believe with faith that this is a crisis and we need to do something about it. But what about the animals? They're being very quiet. There is a story about Francis that is famous in Italy. As his reputation for holiness and peace spread throughout his native Italy, people called upon Francis to help them resolve their disputes, heal their sicknesses, and deliver them from danger or violence. Legend has it that on one such occasion, the people of the small town of Gubbio came to Francis because of the presence of a ferocious wolf who lived in the hills above the town. Not only did the wolf attack and kill the animals, which they raised for food and livelihood, but he terrified and killed the people of the little town, including children. This was an awful situation. The people were unable to get rid of the wolf, so the mayor of Gubbio asked Francis to intervene. He wanted Francis to strike the wolf dead. If he wouldn't do that, he wanted to send him down the road to the town of Spoleto, because Spoleto was their enemy. Good mayoral province, right? But without any weapon, without any stealth, Francis called to the wolf, tamed it with his tenderness, and made it pledge that if the people of Gubbio would care for it, he would never hurt them or their animals. The wolf agreed to refrain from attacks, and the townspeople fed the wolf for the rest of his life. A peaceful thing for the peaceable kingdom. Francis' compassion for all creatures was deeply grounded in the reverent awareness that divine love includes all that God has made, including the flowers and the herbs and the animals. To wrap up this season of creation with the Feast of St. Francis makes perfect sense. The reading from the Metropolitan Callisto of Dioclea, who died just last year, he is not an ancient figure. He is a new one, is a powerful one. As we just heard, we humans are not saved from the world, but with the world. And that means with the animals. For so much of Christian theology, it is said that animals have no souls, so they cannot go to heaven. That was done because they didn't want people worshiping the animals way back when. But I think the theology has gotten sort of mixed up in our understanding and the true understanding of what was intended. I think it's wrong that animals don't go to heaven or have no souls. Not because it would be sad to have our pets, not have our pets waiting for us at the pearly gates, but because they are saved, just like we are. It is not just humans who will be redeemed, but all of creation, in all of its beauty and all of its diversity. I am drawn to the thinking that the Creator is not about just saving us, but the whole of all that has been created.